So hello everybody. Welcome to our series of videos on public awareness. And our guest today is none other than Dr. G.V.S. Murthy. For people like me, I grew up reading his publications. He is presently serving as the director of the Indian Institute of Public Health, Hyderabad, and is also a faculty at the London School of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene. And he has several accolades to his credit, but the most recent one being he was rated as among the top two esteemed scientists in this country. So it's our pleasure to have you here at this awareness interviews of Optometry Council of India, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Prema.
So taking this interview forward, we do understand today there's a lot of emphasis on comprehensive eye health and universal healthcare, right? So these are the two big words which we are reading. So universal healthcare, yes, you mentioned that we should reach out to all population groups in terms of children in schools, in terms of senior citizens, because the adults, when they need glasses, do reach out to optometrists. So we do understand that at least in the cities and slowly even in the rural areas, that presbyopic need is being addressed. Somewhere I think the mobile phones played a role where if they can't see their phone, they do reach out for presbyopia management. So, but in terms of a comprehensive eye care or comprehensive eye exam, what is it you think an optometrist can do? If you can share that with.
Well, I think the way the magnitude of different eye conditions is panning out today, the opportunity also increases. If you look at what is different today compared to say a decade ago or 2 decades ago, is that there is an increase of the non-communicable eye diseases, the chronic ones, looking at a condition like, say, diabetes or condition like glaucoma in the older age population, and the increasing prevalence of myopia because of the pressure that parents are now putting on child education. So there is an ever-increasing burden of eye care requirement, both amongst the younger as well as the older populations. So this gives you the opportunity that you need to provide long-term follow-up care. If you look at children, in addition to myopia, you have pediatric cataract and the increase in retinopathy of prematurity. Now, both these conditions are not a one-time solution conditions. They have to have almost 15 to 20 years of long-term follow-up, where you would need to do refraction, follow-up on the vision. Many of them have low vision and providing them low vision services. So the spectrum of services, because of the increasing magnitude of conditions like ROP and myopia, is actually giving you an excellent clinical opportunity. And therefore, comprehensive eye care is a series of steps and measures that you take to see that the entire continuum of eye care services of individuals is catered to. In the older age populations, if you're looking at glaucoma or diabetic retinopathy as examples, then obviously there is a need for screening and appropriate and timely management. Now, this is not going to be possible in most of the smaller rural areas where you would not have a secondary care setup. But you could have optometrists practicing at that level, and they can play an excellent role in trying to screen as well as follow up on individuals with diabetes. And if you look at the prevalence of diabetes, the way we are going in India, with nearly 15% of the population in most urban areas and above 10% in rural areas having diabetes, and 20% of them having retinopathy. So the sort of magnitude or the opportunity that opens up for comprehensive eye care is very, very, very large. So we need to look at providing that, but we also have to be mindful of the fact that when we're talking about universal eye health and universal health care, we are looking at three dimensions. We're not just looking at the comprehensive eye care service delivery. That is one aspect. The second aspect is the need to protect people from financial catastrophes. So we need to make services affordable. And if you're not able to make it affordable, then we are not working in the spirit of universal health care. And the third aspect is the spectrum of services that you provide. More and more disease conditions that you cover. And like I said, diabetes to glaucoma, to ROP follow-up, to pediatric cataract follow-up, to refractive errors. So that entire gamut of services therefore comes up and is available to the optometrist. It depends on how you take that initiative and how innovative you are. You have to reach out. People have a number of opportunities to look at services, and there is always a competition going around. So you have to reach out. Some of the measures that I mentioned as to how you could be part of a team player could actually help you moving forward. One of the things that I would advise, Prema, in a lot of optometrists, a lot of ophthalmologists also think that if they run these screening camps, then their name gets recognized and a lot of credibility. Let me be very frank, rather than credibility, it does you more harm, because you see a large number of people, you give them a cursory clinical examination, and then many a time you may prescribe but are not able to provide them the service, and then you are never seen for another year. So it actually spoils your reputation. It is time now to move into static facility sort of a base, and whatever you do outside should only be to increase awareness and get sort of people's interest. But in terms of providing the service, it's better to get them back into a static facility where you can provide quality comprehensive eye care and not just comprehensive eye care.
Lovely. Thank you. So that's, I think, a very, again, very, very powerful message where I think, yes, I remember when I was very early in my career, even a cataract used to be a camp mode, and then we moved to doing it only in hospitals. And refractive error was again a camp mode, and now we are moving towards vision center models, which are, I think, very, very good models, very sustainable models also. And I completely second that optometrists can play a very important role. And I think what you pointed out, that they can partner with ophthalmologists, with secondary hospitals, with local NGOs, self-help groups, so that they could do a very good job as a team towards providing a comprehensive eye health. This is a question more for my younger optometrists, where some of them feel that optometry is limited only to doing refractive errors. Although you have very well articulated that a comprehensive eye exam means following up diabetic retinopathy patients, diagnosing them, following them up. Some of them still feel that optometry is more related to refractive error management. So in terms of eye ailments, if you can highlight where optometrists can play a role along with as co-management of conditions with ophthalmologists, if you can be very brief and tell us that just a few points so that the younger people know that optometry is way beyond refractive errors.
Yeah, so, if you look at categorizing some of the services, you put one category as refraction. Yes, that is an important aspect of optometry. We can't forget that. Yes. That has to be there. But then I would add a couple of other categories. Screening for eye diseases. Now, it's not just refractive errors, and I've mentioned
Yes.
diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma. Now, these require a comprehensive eye examination, and we don't have adequate personnel in the rural areas, as well as even in the urban areas, because people have to find time to visit an eye hospital. So you could be the bridge before people need to go to an eye hospital of doing that screening at your own facility. That's the second task that can be done by an optometrist. The third task is the follow-up task, which I also highlighted, that many of the eye conditions like pediatric cataract, retinopathy of prematurity need 15 to 20 years of follow-up. And therefore, that is again another set of activities which can be very well done by an optometrist with 3 to 4 years of training. I think they have all the skills to manage that. The fourth category, which though many people link it to refractive errors, but is slightly different, rather majorly different, is low vision. And I think there is an important reason that optometrists should start looking at low vision. With an increasing population living into their late 70s and 80s, age-related macular degeneration is going to hit us in addition to diabetic retinopathy. And a lot of them would require low vision care. So just don't think it is just an odd child. It is no longer an odd child. It is a large proportion of the population who would require low vision services. And investing in setting up a minimal facility, at least for low vision assessment and advice, would be very critical as a fourth activity. The fifth pillar, which the optometrist should also look at, is investigative support. So it's not just doing the refraction, but also the sort of investigative support with a lot of modernization of equipment, with the availability of fundus cameras and the OCTs, whether in partnership with an eye care team or even on your own if you have the skill and under the guidance or advice or in partnership with other members of the eye care team, you should look at setting up an investigative facility, because people can't wait to go to a big hospital every alternate week. So you have to be the bridge for taking up all these activities. And along with all of them, the umbrella is counseling and awareness creation. Each of these pillars has an umbrella, and on top of it, like the wonderful architecture you see in many of the religious places. So that is what you as an optometrist should do. Not only should you provide comprehensive eye care, you should be a comprehensive human being also. So both those qualities need to go together.
Because I think that's vital, because most people reach out to an optometrist as the first point of contact. If you can't see, you go to your nearby optometrist for an eye exam, right? So I think here you very beautifully almost validated what we keep trying to tell our younger generation, that don't look at optometry as only as refractive errors. There is a gambit of eye ailments which you can really deal with. And my next question is more as an educator. So we understand that globally, public health is done by undergrad, postgrad, and faculty across the world, across all healthcare, right? It doesn't matter whether you're in New York, in a Massachusetts General Hospital, or whether you're in a JJ hospital in Mumbai. These are the organizations that predominantly play a vital role in public health. So some optometry schools do take lead and get their students to work, because it's a two-fold game, right? Our students gain experience, they're able to do some research, and they're also able to render services to those who need. So schools do, some schools do it, but we have over 75 programs today, right? So if you can share with us what is the role all these optometry schools can play in terms of public health, from their curriculum to training their students to delivering services. If you can, give a very strong message to all our schools, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of faculty who would hear this interview, and I would want them to, hear that from you rather than from us.
Well, Prema, I would say it's a win-win situation for everybody, and it gives you a platform which is both in terms of a learning as well as a service platform. Communities need services, and students need to understand communities. And therefore, if you have a community engagement or a public health engagement like you just mentioned, where schools of optometry, they could adopt a couple of schools or a couple of communities, population, catchment populations, like a particular urban slum, which is close to them, or a village where they could provide services, tie up with the primary health center, community health center, teams over there, and that gives the optometrists, the budding optometrists, an opportunity to look at disease as it occurs in the community and the impact that disease has on the communities. And this is something which is very important, because disease does not start in the hospital. Yes, of course, something like hospital-acquired infections start in the hospital, but bearing the hospital-acquired infections, everything else, the roots are in the community, in the places where people are staying. And when they come to you, you would have one person, maybe the grandfather who has come with pseudophakia and has not been corrected properly, needs a correction. The father, the child's father, may come for presbyopic correction, and the child may be brought for myopic correction at 3 different times. But all of them are staying together in the same family. So if we go to the community, adopt families, and start looking at how disease arises, how disease affects, and what are the financial constraints, why is it that people take these decisions on their life priorities and place eye care at a lower pedestal compared to the others. Unless you go interact with communities, you will never understand that. So when you look at most of the medical schools, you have a structured program. And the structured program sees that you have a village which is attached to the medical school. And in each village, you have families being allocated. So I give the example of AIMS and MGIMS Sevagram. Specifically MGIMS Sevagram, where in the very first year, all the medical students go and stay in a village for 2 weeks, and they're allocated five families in the village, which they then follow up for the next 4.5 years. So those families become their responsibility till they complete their medicine. And I see that the sort of linkage, because I worked there for 4 years, the sort of linkage that children develop with the families and their understanding of agricultural practices, when families should not be disturbed because that is the sowing season. They develop that understanding because they interact with families. Some of them, I remember, used to go back after their medicine and stay with those families because they became part of that setup. So it's both a learning as well as a service opportunity, and therefore it is a win-win situation. You have to adopt some schools because of the importance of myopia and other refractive errors, and families to look at how eye care or health care affects the families and what is sort of prioritization that they give. So this adoption process is going to be beneficial, and I think all your 75 schools should develop a structured program and see that this happens. You could also examine them. You know, when you do your optometry exams, your B-optom exams, you could ask people on what is it that they found at the family level. So it's like, just like you have a case presentation, you could have a family presentation and look at a wholesome picture of how disease impacts in the family, specifically eye conditions.
Okay, lovely. I think some really strong, powerful take-home messages we are getting from this interview. I think it's a very good message to all the educators in all the schools. I simply love the idea of adopting families and villages around. And if every school did that, I'm sure we can all make a difference in people's lives. And lovely messages for our practicing optometrists, what they can do in terms of partnership, collaboration. I think Optometry Council of India is honored to have you, because we get such powerful insights from you to make optometry better, and it's so much of validation when it comes from somebody your level. Truly appreciate the time you've given us, and we do hope this interview goes a long way in changing the way optometrists practice, schools teach community eye care, and deliver services. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Murthy.
Thank you, Prema. Thank you so much, and have a great day ahead.
Thank you.